Joe Mixon first, RB2, 27.2 points. I mean, what are your thoughts on him? I mean, he's back. Is he locked and loaded as an RB12 the rest of the way, in your opinion? I mean, from when he's been healthy, we've seen some really strong output from him. It's obviously just been a matter of when he's on the field. But what are your thoughts on Joe Mixon the rest of the way?
Yeah, we've seen really 2 full games out of Mixon. Both of them, he goes over 26.8 fantasy points. Both of them over 100 yards. Both of them, he's seen at least 3 targets. Even in the other game where he left with the injury against Chicago in week 2, he had 5 targets on 29 offensive snaps and 13, and 9, 10, and 12 total touches. So the usage is there. And that was my thing with Mixon going in. Like I felt like, well, everybody was enamored. They're going to throw so much. They brought in Stephon Diggs. I saw it as, well, they also brought in Joe Mixon. And this is a team, like, if you like look at the Slowick offense and the coaching tree he comes from, the Shanahan offense, it's predicated. You need to run the football to open everything up. And you know, I did I expect Joe Mixon to get this much of a workload? No. But this is also like a blessing in disguise. Now, yesterday, coming off the ankle, his workload was only 15 touches. He was just really efficient against the Patriots defense. I like the matchup a lot. To go 102 yards on 13 rushing attempts and then 2 for 30, like that's outstanding. That's 7.8 yards per rush. And then in week 1, where he went over 100, he was at 5.3. This is an aging running back. I still think he has some tread left on the tires. He's in the right offense because he's not going to see a lot of stacked boxes. It's almost like a lateral move leaving Cincinnati and going to Houston with how good these quarterbacks and these receivers are there. But I wasn't really worried about re-injury. And a big reason why, and Pete, made a good case yesterday, where it's like, hey, a couple weeks ago, he was doing practice videos. It looked like he was going to come back and he was inactive. I felt like if Joe Mixon wasn't ready, they're not putting him on the field because this team's a 4-1 football team. They did not have to rush Joe Mixon back. So I was comfortable the fact that they were going to activate him and let him play. I was comfortable enough to put him in my fantasy lineup.
Yeah. In terms of rest of the way,
to be fair, I only thought he was going to get I thought he would get like a touchdown, like maybe 15 PPR points. Like I did not project 27.2.
Yeah, so I mean, to your point, I mean, he was super efficient. And they really didn't pound him like we assumed, but like you said, he just took care of business. Is he, looking at some of his matchups going ahead, he's got Green Bay 17th in terms of points allowed to the running back position. He gets Indianapolis 22nd to the running back position. He gets the Jets, who are 5th in terms of 5th best, and then Detroit, Dallas 29, Tennessee, Jacksonville. I could continue to go on and on. His playoff schedule is a little tough. He gets Miami 30. I'm not too worried about Kansas City, who he gets in the second week of the fantasy playoffs through number 1, but I expect that to be a high-scoring game. I don't need Joe Mixon to be efficient, and this isn't an efficiency ranking, but I expect it to be a high-scoring game in Week 16, so I think he should be fine. But the original question was, do you expect him to be a top 12 fantasy running back if we were ranking him from today going on? I don't know if you have you might say, I really don't know yet, and that's fine too, but do you have a strong enough opinion on him going forward?
Yeah, this is kind of a 2-part answer. I do think he could be a top 12 running back, but he is somebody I would sell high on. And the reason why, because of all the top 10 difficult matchup he has on the schedule. And then you bring up the playoff schedule. Week 14, he's on a bye.
Yeah.
That's the start of the playoffs. You can't use him. Good
matchup. No, it's not. No. Week 15, 16, 17.
I'm sorry.
So
FFPC, it's a playoff week. So I think with the high stakes, but the high stakes, a lot of playoffs start week 14. But still, I don't know, like that KC Baltimore in week 16 and 17, that scares the hell out of me. You got the Jets and Detroit in there. You got Tennessee in there. This might be a guy he can be a top 12 running back and have a bunch of 27-point games. And then he could also, because we saw this in Cincinnati, where he'd have these big spike weeks, and then he would give you 10 points in the other ones.
Yeah.
And then they liked Dare Ogunbowale. Damian Pierce, he might be involved. Like, he had a 54-yard touchdown yesterday. He went 8 for 76 on the ground. So, like, this might be a sell high point for Joe Mixon.
Yeah. Hey, well, one thing looking back, and then we'll get to Najee, and then we'll get to some questions in the chat. One thing to keep in mind against Baltimore, 2 times last year, 13.5 fantasy points he had, and he also had 21. So he's averaging somewhere around 16, not terrible. And then against Kansas City in week 17 last year, he was able to have 18.7. Rushing wise, I mean, he carried the ball 21 times for 65 yards, wasn't amazing, but he did catch 4 passes for 22 yards. That's such an underrated part of Mixon's game is just receiving, man. He's so good at that. But all right, moving on to Najee Harris, who was my guy who, to be honest with you, and I'm all about transparency. I traded